I have learned that there are 3 life positions that we can take at any time, and we can flow in and out of these depending upon the circumstance, but there's one that is better than all the others. The 3 positions would be a servant, we can be a slave, or we can be a hireling. Now, let me explain this to you. Let's talk about, first of all, the difference between a servant and a slave. A servant gets to. A slave has to. Okay? Do you know when Jesus said, if they want you to take their colt 1 mile, go 2. Why does he say that? He's trying to keep them from becoming slaves. So let's review this. If a Roman soldier comes up to, or Roman soldier or even citizen comes up to me, and I'm a Jewish person, right? Back in those days, and I got all my groceries. I got my Haagen-Dazs bars in there. I got, you guys know I don't eat Haagen-Dazs, but anyway. But I got all my milk, my perishables, and that guy says to me, I want you to walk my horse 1 mile. Do you know, by law, I had to do it. I had to put down my groceries, and they're all going to perish now, and I have to go 1 mile, and then I got to come back and get them. That was a bad deal. And Jesus is saying to them, okay, why do you want to do this feeling like I have to do it when you can do it and get to do it? So you're going to choose if you're going to be the slave that has to go the 1 mile, or you're going to choose if you're going to be the servant that says, I'll go the extra mile. If you're a servant, you're free. If you're a slave, you're in bondage. And you'd be amazed at how many people are in bondage today because they're slaves. They have a slave mentality. The servant does the maximum. The slave does the minimum requirement. So the slave's going to go the 1 mile, the servant's going to go 2. Now the hireling, we really make hireling sound bad, but really, to be honest with you, the definition of a hireling is not a bad thing. It's a person who serves for merely pay or wages. That's the definition of a hireling. They're motivated to work because they're being paid for it. Now that's not an evil thing, but it's not the highest thing. Because the hireling will work as long as I'm being paid, the servant will work to get the job done. Now, if you look at the life posture of Jesus, the way he came, I want you to notice this. Jesus says in Mark 10:43 through 45, he says, whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to serve, but to serve others and give his life. So Jesus made it clear, I didn't come to be served, I came to serve. Now I find it quite interesting that the last illustrated sermon that Jesus left these guys on the earth in the upper room was washing their feet. Now how many of you have ever been to a place in Christianity where you were in a small group and somebody pulled out the basin and the pitcher and they had everybody take their shoes and socks off? Come on, let's be honest. Have you ever had that happen? Did you hate it? Yes, I did. And unfortunately, back in college, it was really big. So I got saved in college, right? In my fraternity. And I'm going to all these Bible studies. And man, they'd pull out these basins. And I'm going, ain't no guy going to touch my feet. And I'd make up some excuse, I'm sorry to say, to get out of there as fast as I could before I had to take my shoes and socks off. Because I didn't want nobody touching my feet. Okay, now, you know what I'm really happy to hear? I'm happy to hear that I was okay in doing that. Because do you remember Moses put the brazen serpent on the pole and everybody looked at it, got healed? Do you know that later on they made an idol out of that brazen serpent? If you just read your Bible, you'll find out they made an idol out of it. What Jesus was doing had a significant meaning and we made an idol out of it. So I'm so glad, because it has no meaning today. Let me explain it. Back in those days, a very wealthy man or a very wealthy couple would have a household full of servants. They'd have servants that take care of the animals. They had servants that took care of the kitchen. They had servants that took care of the children. They had servants that took care of other aspects of the home. And you know what? The lowest servant, the bottom servant. So if there's 20 household servants, number 20, and it usually was a female, she had a job. You know what her job was? To wash the family's feet and guests' feet when they came into a house. Because we got to think about it. Back in those days, roads weren't concrete. They weren't asphalt. They were dirt. Transportation wasn't cars, okay? It was horses, donkeys, and camels. And horses, donkeys, and camels don't go to rest stops to go to the bathroom. They do it right on the road. And a lot of people had sandals, and some people even had bare feet, so they're walking on pathways that have animal waste on it. So when they walk into the house, they got to have their feet clean. Now these guys are in an upper room, and this upper room was, this house was so big, this upper room, you can have a staff of 13 people having a full dinner while they're separated from the rest of the family. You got to understand, this is a good sized house, and you probably got the 20 or 30 servants. So when all 12 of these guys that Jesus is having dinner with walked into the house just a couple hours earlier, some young female who was the bottom servant of all the servants of this household washed their feet. So when Jesus pulls this thing out and disrobes and puts a towel around it and starts to wash their feet, they're freaking out. And that's why Peter's going, you are not doing this. But I love what Jesus says after he does it. He says, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. I am your Lord, and I am your teacher. And he said, and since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you.